in this edition of Generations. It's an important election year as we head towards the presidential elections in November. We find out about the voting process here in Connecticut and the many ways you can cast your vote. And Judy Jenks from seniorcenterct.org joins us to talk about getting a job in these COVID-19 times. Hello, I'm Brian Scott Smith and welcome to Generations, a podcast for people of your generation. The presidential elections in November is fast approaching, and with COVID-19 still very much around and causing concerns for the voting process, we thought it best to get some expert advice on what's happening in Eastern Connecticut and how you can make sure your vote gets counted. Well, joining us is Betsy Barrett, City and Town Clerk for the City of Norwich. Betsy, thanks for joining us on the podcast.
Thank you so much, Brian, for having me.
It's an important year. It's a voting year. The question's quite simple. Why should we vote and how important is it to vote?
Well, that's a great question. Why we should vote. We have been given the right and privilege to vote from our forefathers. It gives us a voice to tell government what we would like them to do for us. We have the ability to decide the quality of life for us and for future generations. So I think that's an important reason to get out and vote. Voting is important because it's your choice. It's not required. I feel it's our civic responsibility to go and vote. You'll have your voice heard. Remember, every vote counts. We decide who we elect, which will decide what taxes we pay, what programs we have, things like educational choices, policies, laws, funding. And if we don't vote, that would not be good because we'd probably lose our freedoms in our country and have them taken away.
There's a lot of controversy in this year's election. We're not going to get overly political. In fact, we're not going to get political about it. But what I do want to understand from you as obviously a city and town clerk is about the voting process, because that's what's been in the media quite a bit. And I think there's still a lot of confusion for people who are trying to understand what they do, when and how. So can you talk us through some of the voting process?
I will. And you are right. There are a lot of different new things that are available right now. New and old, I should say. So we're talking about the November presidential election voting process, which an election year for president is always a high turnout vote year for towns and cities. As we know, we want to be safe and secure and have everybody be safe and secure as they cast their ballots for this very important election. And now with this COVID-19 pandemic around, we do have some changes. There will still be two ways to cast your ballot. One, you can still go to the polls in person. The polls will all be open. You vote at the polling place where you normally voted last year, or if you went to the primary, at the primary. You will have to wear a mask, follow the 6-foot guidelines. The registrar of voters who oversees the polling places with the moderator has made sure that there are guidelines to follow. The 6-foot, there will be pens, they'll be washed down after use. The voting booths will be washed down and sanitary after the booths. The poll workers will have masks on, and the polls will be open as normal from 6 a.m. to 8 p.m. to ensure that be able to get there. If by chance you cannot make it to the polls on that day, cannot make it at that time, or don't feel that you are comfortable with that. And let me just back up a minute. I should say, if you don't know where your polling place is, you can look on your town website, call your local registrar or town clerk, and they will help you find your polling place. The second way to cast your ballot for this election is by an absentee ballot. This is what the Secretary of State is now sending out. The applications to over 2.1 million voters will be sent out the week of Labor Day. You will get an absentee ballot application in the mail with a return envelope with postage. So we're asking if you would please, if you're going to vote this way, either mail that back to the city clerk that's on the return, which will be a windowed envelope. You can just sign it, make sure you sign it, check the reason why you want an absentee ballot, put it back in that envelope, make sure the window on that envelope is addressed to the city clerk. We've sometimes had problems with it being addressed back to the person. This is unfortunate. They send it back to us, but double check that it's addressed to the city clerk before you drop it in the mail. Or for your security also, we have Dropboxes at each and every city hall. So whatever town you belong to, you would drop it in that Dropbox if you feel more comfortable doing that. They're picked up daily, maybe more than once or twice or 3 times a day. So that's one of the things, is to get that application back to the clerks as soon as possible, because we will have an onslaught this year of applications.
Now, one of the things just to be clear about when you said about the drop boxes, obviously a lot of city halls are not open to the public still because of COVID-19. But if people are concerned about delays in the post, and we'll talk about that in just a moment, these drop boxes are outside, as you say, with city halls so that they can effectively all but, return it to the city clerk that way by, personally going to the drop box.
Correct. Each town hall has one or more. In Norwich, I have 2 right now. I'm hoping to get a third. One is at Waquanic School. There's a Dropbox there, and one of them is in front of City Hall. All the town clerks' offices, 169 towns, have them in front of their town hall. You have to put your ballot application in the town that you live in.
Very important, because it's not a postal box, it's a drop box specific for that town.
Correct.
Now, concerns about post, putting it in the mail. What's the latest that you are hearing the city of Norwich about, the post office's ability to make sure that, if these things are returned by traditional mail, that they will be received in time? And also, what advice are you giving to people about how quickly they should be mailing these things as well?
Good question. So remember, we're only talking about the applications. The applications go out that week of Labor Day, and if you could get them back to the city clerk as soon as possible, we will start getting the ballots ready. The ballots will not go out till October 2nd. By law, that's the earliest we can send out ballots. We don't have the ballots as of yet. It hasn't been determined yet who all is on the ballot. We know the Republican and Democrat people, but we don't know the other parties as of yet. So your application is very important to get it in the Dropbox or the mail as soon as possible. And the mail has been working very closely, and I've been working very closely with the postmaster in Norwich to make sure our mail is delivered in a timely fashion, even on Saturdays.
And again, the thing that we need to be clear about these postal ballots, and please correct me if I'm giving out incorrect information here, but if the actual ballot, not the application, if the actual ballot is not received by a certain point, it will not be counted. Is that correct?
Correct. You have up until 8 p.m. to put your ballot in that post box or return it to the city clerk's office on election day, which is November 3rd. They have to be received by the clerk by 8 p.m. on November 3rd. We call the post office late in the day and see if they have any late arrivals. They'll sometimes bring them over. We sometimes pick them up, but it has to be in the clerk's hand by 8 p.m. election night. That's why this Dropbox is so important, that you can put it in as late as you want if it's before 8 p.m. The ballots don't go out, remember, till October 2nd.
So the point really to make here to anyone listening is, if they're thinking of doing postal voting this year for whatever reason, that they really have to be organized. As soon as they see that application, they have to get it back straight away. And then, as you say, then you will be able to get those ballots out on time as well. So everybody really needs to be helping each other here.
Correct. Larger cities like Norwich are going to have a huge demand for absentee ballots from the applications. Probably about 60%, we're assuming, are going to vote by absentee, and the other probably 20-25% will vote in person. So we will have a lot of people working to make this process smooth. The post office does have requirements also where they know if it's a ballot, it's to be done quickly and efficiently. And we're all on the same page because every vote counts.
I want to put this question to you. It's a bit of a sort of like a curveball question, so forgive me, but you've been doing this for a long time now. Is this probably one of the most challenging election years from your point of view because of, COVID and everything else?
Yes, it is. As town clerks, we take a real vested interest in making sure that everything is done to the letter and correctly. We don't want anybody to miss out. We don't want to miss anything. We check, we double check, and we make sure that everything is done so every vote is counted. We know how important this is in any election. So we really take our time and make sure everything is done correctly. But it is very challenging because we will have so many more absentee ballots. And that's not an easy challenge to do because we get the application, we have to put it into our computer system, then we issue a ballot, we mail it out to you, then you return it to us and we put it back in our system as a double check to say, yes, you only received one ballot, you've only voted once. The names are crossed off on a list, so you can't go to the polls and vote again. So it's a very, very secure process on only one vote per person.
You've got a lot of work ahead of you and many other town clerks around, obviously, Connecticut and the nation as well. And we are very grateful to have you there, making sure that we have a very safe, reliable, efficient, and above all, credible election coming up later in the year. Betsy, it's been a real pleasure talking to you, and I wish you and everybody who's involved with this process success in what is a very, very challenging year for all of you.
Thank you for your time. And can I just do one more important piece? When these absentee ballot come to the people at home, they will see that there are 4 pieces of mail inside, and it does get a little confusing sometimes, and we won't be there to help them with the instructions. There's an instruction sheet inside. There's your ballot inside. You vote your ballot as you would at the polls. And then there'll be either a white or yellow envelope labeled B. It's very, very important you date and sign that envelope and then put it into the serial numbered envelope. This is very important that you sign that inner envelope before you put it in the serial numbered envelope, because that will ensure that everything will go smoothly. But I thank you also for your time. I thank you for letting me speak. And if anyone has questions, please feel free to call me at the Norwich City Clerk's office.
And of course, people can call their city clerks as well, wherever they're listening, obviously for their own town as well, for the same expert advice.
Absolutely. We'll take all calls. Any clerk will be glad to take a call.
Betsy, again, ever so many thanks. And thank you again for giving us your time on the podcast.
Thank you, Brian, very much. Nice talking with you.
And if you have any concerns or questions about the voting process, from voting locations in your area to absentee ballots, then contact your local town or city clerk's office for free and impartial advice. So joining us as always is Judy Jenks from seniorcenterct.org. Judy, great to speak to you again.
And it's wonderful talking to you as well, even though we still are not in person.
We'll get there one day. It's one of those things that we remember a long time ago.
Yes, a long, long, long time ago.
So anyway, Judy, get a job. I don't mean that to you, but that's what you're going to be talking to us about, isn't it?
Yes, I'm going to talk today about getting a job, because now's the time. Companies are hiring, big and small, full-time and part-time. Just figure out what you're looking for. Do you want to do the same type of work you did before? Do you want to do something totally different? Do you want something to keep you busy and get you out of the house? Do you want to maybe find a job that goes along with your hobby? Do you want to work just part of the year? If you do, then maybe retail hiring for the holidays, a garden center, landscape companies. Check out schools. They're hiring nurses' aides, substitute teachers, paraprofessionals, bus monitors, and office staff. Do you like wine and know a lot about it? Check out the area wineries and see if they have seasonal openings. How about a golf course? Work part-time and maybe play for free. The same goes for a gym. What population would you like to work with? Kids? Maybe a daycare or a school. Be a nanny. With food, how about a restaurant or a bakery? Maybe you want to work at a big box store and take advantage of the discount they offer to workers. Do you want to meet a lot of people? So maybe a receptionist, a telemarketer, a service desk clerk. What do you want from a job? Do you want extra money? Being able to travel, structure, identity, Could the job you're looking for be at a bank? Perhaps an online job. Maybe sales, where you earn commission based on the sales you make. If that's the case, the sky could be the limit for your income. Home care agencies are always looking to hire. So are nursing homes and rehabs. Those jobs could be in the kitchen or the laundry at a nursing home, a companion, a certified nurse's aide, taking people to appointments, maybe light housework. To find these jobs, tell others you're looking. Look on Facebook. Lots of times companies post jobs there. Ask at places you go each week. Volunteer and then maybe get hired. What about tutoring? Are you a teacher? Are you really good at math? Are you already helping kids with remote learning? Right now, with so much going on with COVID, some families are looking for more one-on-one situations. You could teach using Zoom. You could help kids figure out and organize the assignments that the schools are giving them. It can be very hard for families with both parents working to then come home and find the time to assist their students every day. You could be the person they need. Also, some families are grouping up and hiring someone to teach all the kids. This would be great if you're a retired teacher. You can easily put yourself out there on Facebook or LinkedIn with what you have to offer, and then anyone interested can private messenger you. Depending on what you want to do, you don't even have to actually meet person to person. You don't even need to live in the same area. You could be in Milwaukee and the student could be in Denver. The time to apply is now. Research, develop a resume and a cover letter. Even if you don't need those, they will help you rediscover your skills and talents. Have a list of questions for the interviewer. And if you're rejected, don't put yourself down. It's not personal. Just move on to the next opportunity and get a job.
Wise words, and so true in this environment as well, because I mean, I'm a remote worker. I've remote worked for many, many years, and occasionally, obviously, when there aren't things like COVID-19 going around, I go and interview people. But you're absolutely right about the advice you give in this, because we're seeing more organizations, not only in this country, but around the world, now looking at having more remote workers, because we just don't know how long we're obviously going to be forced to continue to live with COVID-19. So it really is a ripe opportunity.
It is. And the thing is, a lot of companies always thought that the worker had to go to the office. And they've found through what we're forced to do now that having people work from home is ideal. They're more productive. They're saving on their utilities. They're going to save on office space. They're going to save in a lot of different ways. And the workers, other than losing socialization, they're finding that, they're liking working from home. There's no commute. They're not spending hours in a car going back and forth. So definite possibilities out there.
And you're absolutely right when it comes to remote workers putting in more hours, because I know for a fact that I will generally be sat at my desk in the morning by at least maybe 7:30, 8 o'clock. And I'll continue working, take breaks. And sometimes, I'll carry on working until about 6 or 6:30. Now, I don't do that every day, but you get into a rhythm. Like you said, you don't have to worry about the commute and other distractions that traditional offices have had. And you get a lot of work done.
You do get a lot of work done. I'm also a remote worker. And I find that, you are maybe having your coffee first thing in the morning and you start checking emails. You start looking at Facebook. And you're actually working. And you're working a whole lot more hours, because in the evening you might be watching TV or whatever. And again, you're back on your device checking things out, maybe reading articles and educating yourself in your field. Yeah, a lot more work gets done.
And one of the things I know that I do, because again, like you, use a lot of technology, so I can look at my emails on my phone like a lot of people do. I have a young dog and she needs to be taken for a walk, a few times a day. So while I'm out walking with her, she's on her leash, she's safe. And I'll pull out my phone and just have a quick look, see if there's any emails. And often, I can either quickly respond to something that way, or again, even if I'm in the home and I've taken a break away from my desk and, maybe doing the laundry or something, which is, what people do, you work all your chores around there, you're still actually working. So it is actually very advantageous. And it's interesting because I was reading an article fairly recently from a British newspaper, And several large companies in the UK have already started to say they're not going to have their workers come back to offices. They've already said we're going to start looking at remote working, which is that is huge.
And the thing is that some of our work becomes very passive, because you can be listening to a podcast, like you said, as you're doing the laundry. You can be watching, a video clip that's teaching you something or whatever while you're doing something else. So I think in the long term, the remote worker is going to become a lot more well-rounded. And as time goes on, the companies are going to figure out who the good workers are remotely and who's not. And those good workers will have a lot more freedom. I think they'll be able to say in the future, on Friday, I want to, start my vacation, or I want to be away. And here's all my work for the week. And it will be more than enough for the hours they're getting paid, and they'll get paid for the full week.
And also in the past, we've spoken about, once you retire, about going on to have like a second career almost. And again, this is just a great opportunity if you're reasonably interested in doing it, a little bit entrepreneurial, don't mind using, the technology. It's a great second career opportunity.
And the thing is, you can become a 1099 worker. And so, a company is going to be attracted to you because they don't have to pay taxes and they don't have to do all of those things. You are the 1099 employee, contractor, and you have the independence to work when you want to work and stay within a tax bracket if that's, meaningful to you by limiting that income.
And the great thing, of course, about being a 1099 worker is, of course, you can write a lot of things off on tax as well, because if you're using your home as an office, you're allowed to, obviously, for tax purposes, if you have either a working space or an actual dedicated office, you can write that off for tax. Obviously, your computer, anything that you use for business. So again, it's advantageous. Your phone, your cell phone, if you use that purely for business only. So there are a lot of advantages to it.
Definite advantages, and it's an advantage in both ways, both for the company and for the 1099 contractor.
Well, it will be interesting, Judy, to see as we continue, as I say, to live with COVID-19, how the world of work continues to change. And I'm sure we will be having discussions about this again in the future. But it will be fascinating to see how people and businesses pivot going forward. As always, it's great talking to you. And we will catch up with you again in the next episode.
Yes, we will.
That's all from this edition of Generations. Don't forget to visit seniorcenterct.org to find out what's going on in your neck of the woods. And if you want to send us a topic to talk about or want to be our guest on the podcast, drop us a line by visiting the seniorcenterct.org website. Go to the bottom of the homepage and click the How to Advertise with Us link to get in touch. From myself, Brian Scott Smith, thanks for listening. Stay safe. We'll catch you next time.